All right, you'll have to forgive me because I did not have time to prepare the normal intro credits, but I will have at least one individual who will be very pleased with that because uh, they didn't like them. So, hello, everybody. Welcome to the Indie Book Release channel. I am joined by Brian Holshouser. You'll have to forgive me for butchering that because I'm sure you're not used to that at all.
Never had
um,
anyone not be able to say it right. I'm
he,
just kidding.
he is a repeat guest. He was on here not too long ago for this lovely book here. And he is joining us again because he has a new book out, which is a follow on to this wonderful book here. So I am very pleased to have him on uh, to talk about Flame of the Emerald and what that is for him. I'm going to go ahead and I'll kick it over to Brian, let you give a little pitch for this particular book, and then we'll get right into it. We're old friends here.
True enough. I think everyone here probably knows who I am, at least any repeating watchers. Yeah, my name's Brian Holshouser. I'm from Oklahoma. I started publishing last year. Uh, Flame of the Emerald Shadow is actually it's the sequel to my debut, which was The Electric Moon, that book that uh, Jessica held up just a second ago. That book came out in March of 2025. I've been working on that world for probably 14, 15 years, and I just finally got the courage and desire to really put it out in public, and I'm just honored to be here talking about it, Jessica. It's so much fun to be here. So thank you so much for
Abs-
hosting and putting this on.
Absolutely. So again, you're a repeat guest, so I had you on when you had your novella, and I think we did talk a little bit at that point about the idea that you're working on this sequel, a little bit about your world. Since then, I've actually started to get into Gwen's Kingdom, the first book, so that's been fun. It gives me a little more context as far as what you're actually writing, which I think helps as an interviewer when you're trying to talk to somebody that you actually have some pretext. But I'm
That's
I'm
so
you
cool.
know I am definitely interested. So I think I'm trying. I want to expand or talk about things that we haven't already talked about. So I guess I'm interested in this idea, like, of how we select the genres in which we write. So Gwen's Kingdom, if I frame it, is definitely more of like I would say like a YA type of story. You have a young lady as a protagonist, and it definitely has some of those like Harry Potter type vibes as far as magic and student type wizardry type thing. So I'm curious as far as like what made you, when you decided to sit down and write this or got the idea in your head, to tailor a story towards that age group.
Yeah, so it started out real interesting. I wasn't certain at first if I wanted it to even be YA. I really enjoyed things like Avatar: The Last Airbender, the Narnia books. Um, I did read Harry Potter, but I actually didn't start reading Harry Potter until I was like midway through this book, the first book, and I was actually kind of editing it and rechanging things. And so a lot of people get the vibe of Harry Potter, but it wasn't like my main thing. I've been reading books like Lord of the Rings and Name of the Wind, and there is kind of a wizard school in Name of the Wind. And there's some things where I was like, oh, this is really cool, but I think it could build on it more, make it just kind of intertwine with the world of magic just a little bit more. And then Harry Potter was all about that. So it's like,
Yeah.
oh, so I actually thought I actually overdid it. but, but no, I wasn't really sure at first how I wanted to do it. And then the more I started writing, I wrote the story originally with like this male protagonist, and I kind of hated it. And so, so like I went back and wrote it again, and I was like, I got to change something, and I changed it to a female protagonist, and it just kind of flowed and fell into place. So I was like, okay, I can do this more from this perspective. It felt fresh, it felt right, and so the more I wrote, it's almost like that discovery became more of a thing to me too, where I was like, okay, I need to go back further. I need to show more. I need to dig in deeper because I couldn't just pull it out like into the middle of her hey, this is a wizard, and actually it wouldn't mean anything, to people to just have that story. And so I went back as far as I could to make it make sense. And so I have this thing where I'd start doing that, and then a few simple chapters became like 10 chapters. And so I was like, okay, this, this story's obviously going to grow. And then characters like Jack and Shelley, I ended up falling in love with them as I kind of figured out who they were. And so I was like, I want more of this. And so it just kind of bloomed into the Gwen's Kingdom story, and the characters just became their own thing. And what should have been like maybe a chapter or two was like, okay, this is almost a book. So it's kind of one of those things that, as a writer, I think I discovered it too, as I kind of went in and wrote the story. As weird as that sounds, so
So
yeah,
it's interesting because you mentioned that you started with the idea of like, okay, I'm a different protagonist. And I think like part of where I started was I picked the person and then kind of weaved the story in around that. So that it's interesting to me because you had like a different idea when you started, and then you're saying like I hated it. What about it didn't feel like it was working that switched when you had the young female protagonist instead?
well, okay, that's a really good question. So when I was actually writing the character, I didn't even have a name for the guy. I found myself rewriting a lot of my own historical experiences, and I was projecting a lot onto the character. And that comes a lot from me being an author of music. You usually tell stories of yourself, but you're not really putting yourself in there. You're not naming yourself. You're just writing the story. It's experience, and you write it out as if someone else was having it. And I stepped back and I was like, this is stuff that I'm projecting my own beliefs and feelings and everything onto. And it's really hard for me to separate the character from me. And so it felt like it was too much of me. And I wanted to figure out how to pull myself out and then write. And I know that sounds really weird, but doing it with a female, like, it separated everything from me. It made me rethink every situation. Like, I have 5 sisters. What would they have done in this situation? I had friends who were girls. I had to rethink, like, how do they act? How do they think? How do they talk? And it was totally different than me because I wasn't projecting everything I've done onto the character. And so it taught me how to write, really, is what it did. And so I'm not saying it's a bad thing to do that, like put your character out there, but as a new author of long form writing, for me, it just separated that thought process so much more that it actually made it flow easier. It made it really run a lot smoother, and I had a lot more fun writing it. So I ended up loving it more than I ever would have loved the male protagonist, and it did. It taught me a lot too. So I'm glad I did it. It really has taught me a ton about writing. So
Yeah, that's actually really interesting, and I can see that like as an author, like I would say it definitely when you have like that person that is more relatable to you or that you can connect with, there is a tendency to put yourself more into it. And I think the big complaint right now, right, is the self-insert characters and all
yeah,
these books where it's like they're authors power fantasies, and there's truth to that when you're writing the opposite gender or you're trying to write it in somebody that's clearly different than you. It's you have to like think and filter through in a different way than you would otherwise.
yeah, yeah. It really taught me a lot. And what it did is it kind of separated the character from me enough that I could step back and I could draw out the characters, what they like, what they do, what they wouldn't do, their personal interests, how they think, and just do it differently than putting your own projection of yourself onto it. And I could do a male character now pretty simple because I've done it and I've written some males, and it's just so much easier for me to write them now because I haven't, like, I guess I've just grown that much as an author. So it's really interesting when you first start writing. That for me it was really tricky, especially coming from music, because as an author in music, it's super easy to just you're writing your stories. You're still putting a piece of you in the story no matter what. Like a piece of your soul comes out in that story, but it's like in music, it's like that's all you most of the time, unless you're writing very clearly about something. Like I've written about friends who passed away, and there are some songs on YouTube about that, and those are very clearly not about me, but they are still in a perspective of my own, and it's easy for people to pick up on that. But when you're writing a story and people are in those eyes of that character, it's really different the first few times for me anyway, going in and writing that character. So yeah, writing a girl, it was so much better for me. It really did. It forced me to learn it, is what it did.
Yeah. And have you I know my opinions, but I'll ask you as from the author and from feedback. I know you've gone out into the community, you've had people come back and like buy a second, the Curie's last name, like when they bought the other one, or the vice versa. So it seems like you've connected with people. Have people communicated to you that you've done well as far as portraying the young girl character?
Actually, so I'll get back to your question, but I'm gonna answer by talking about something. So what I did when I wrote the book is I have one, two, three, four. I had five betas that are girls. Those are my first betas, and I actually asked them. And one is an editor. She used to do a policy edit for a community college, so she's pretty good at editing. I had them all read it, and I said, "Tell me your thoughts before I go forward. Is this something like pause me if I hit the wrong tone, if I just say something that doesn't sound right?" if I if I write something that's not realistic from a girl's perspective, let me know. I want it to, I
Yeah.
want it to feel very natural and very realistic and in enough of an immersed sense that people don't pull out of that immersion and go, oh, a girl wouldn't do that. And so every one of them, so from the betas, they all said, no, this is perfect. In fact, one of them, they noted on, like, there's one scene where Shelly and Gwen jump on a bed and, just for fun. And they kick off their shoes and it's just like they're having a ruckus. And so they were like, no, this is total teenage girl behavior. And so, so far, no one, knock on wood, has said, no, none of this feels like it's forced or not authentic in that sense. And I spent a long, long time really, thinking about the characters and how I portray them. And growing up with five sisters, I was very, cued into how girls think and act. So it helped to have a perspective from that angle. So, so far, knock on wood, no one said anything negative. So I think actually I almost write girls better now that I've thought about it more, because I don't want to project myself onto them. I think that's a big thing. It's just easier to let it be like there. I don't know. It's just easier to let that flow out and write that character naturally. As weird as that is, but
I have a similar experience, but in the reverse. So I can relate to this. Uh,
lot,
another
yeah.
thing, so another thing I'm interested in is that there seems to be a recurring theme, or at least there are a couple characters in your story that come from this, like, don't know their background or family. Either they're orphans or they've lost parents. So it's interesting. That was interesting to me. I picked up that there were several characters and that there's a thread of like identity and knowing your past, which I definitely connected with myself because I'm an adoptee. So I was like, oh, this like idea of like wanting to know, and the way that different characters handle it. Because I've so I'm interested to know if that was intentional, where that came from, you know, thoughts from your perspective as the author of that.
Oh, that's a deep question. So when I was growing up, I had friends who they lost their parents very young, and my parents divorced about the age of 18. So I saw a lot of parental things that really did affect the way my friends and myself we experience life. And so, like you just said, there's a lot of relatability there. A lot of parents split up. People do lose their parents, unfortunately. And so I didn't want it to feel too generic at the time. It probably wasn't as it is now. Um, I started writing this probably 2011, 12. So some of that was still in my head. It was fresh. It wasn't, overdone. Now it seems like everyone does it. But, oh, excuse me. It just felt to me like I was putting something out there that I know people in my shoes growing up could relate to a little bit. At least I believe. And then, like you said, how people deal with it. And then there's also that found family kind of feeling like, Gwen and the whole, trio experienced that with, Jack and Delilah, I mean, France and Delilah and things like that. It kind of brings a little bit more of a homey, cozy feeling to the story that I think otherwise it would be kind of lacking in that area if I didn't put it in there. With Gwen, it's so key in the story. I can't really not have it. It was a huge portion of, her discovering who she is as a princess, as this, heir of the throne, that two thrones that she will never truly know until she discovers it, how she's supposed to handle that. And so there's a lot of things there, but like you said, her other friends also have that. And I know it's just really, really weird to try to say what I'm trying to think here, but I know growing up I saw it, and I wanted it to be in there so it was, you know, not just relatable but also comforting in a way where people could kind of experience it, people like, oh, you know, you could still be awesome even if you don't have a mom or a dad, or you didn't know them, or you're still kind of figuring out who you are in the world. You still have a place, and you still can fit in. You know, there's still like that aspect. I wanted to kind of feel like it could bring some meaning in there to the story where not just relate, but actually kind of, you know, bring a simple, kind of a beat of hope, I guess, into it in a way. So there's a little thought process I put in there on it, trying to think of how to do it. It's definitely repeatable in the three main characters, but I didn't want it to feel too redundant either. Now looking back, I think so many people have done it. It's probably like, you know, I see people even mention that in writing posts and stuff on X and Threads and everywhere. They say, oh, every fantasy has to have a you know, the lost family aspect. I was like, that wasn't a big deal. I didn't know a lot of people that had that, you know, before. So I guess
I mean,
it's more of a common thread now.
I'm guilty myself. Like
Yeah,
not all my characters, but like I do have many of an orphan character.
it does. Well, I mean, there's so much you can build off an orphan character, and I don't want to spoil anything, but I do have plans for some of these like reveals eventually. So there are some big ones that could come out that will come out of this that I'm actually kind of scared to reveal because I know people like some of the characters and some of them may actually take a turn. So I don't want to say too much, but it's definitely I've got plans, so to say. But
Well, with that,
that's a good question.
you're welcome. so so with that, this is the second book. Is there a third that you're working on?
So this is actually volume one of the second book,
Okay.
and just so people understand. So again, the whole I was supposed to write this much, and it became
Just
this much.
yeah.
So I actually love where this book went. It took me there, and it was supposed to be about 50,000 words, and it became 74,000 words. It was only supposed to be half of the book, and that's what it is. But I'm gonna have to finish that second half. I have a good chunk of it written, but I'm probably gonna go back and kind of rewrite it again. There's certain things I think I can portray better and just write a little better, and so I usually do that anyway. But I'll go back and fix the second half and make it a little more of a good second book. And then after that, yeah, there will be almost has to be at least a third, if not a fourth at this point, which I kind of feel like it's gonna like probably take me, I don't know, at least another year or two to get these out because it takes me so long to write and edit. But in the art, it takes me forever to do art. But at the same time, I'm still like considering like, do I want to keep the art? Should I pull that out of the book? You know, like it's so hard to try and balance all that in there and do it all. It feels like it's overwhelming at sometimes. So
You keep doing it, you're supposed to get faster at this, right? Like it's supposed to get easier.
it takes me longer. I don't know what I'm doing wrong.
Maybe you're getting more detail. Like if I'm looking at, because I'm staring at the covers on my page right now, and it's like, I mean, maybe it's just like from each one you're getting more detailed. I
Yeah, I'm
would
more
say,
picky. I definitely
yeah,
did. I think I did a really good job on this cover.
yeah, it's beautiful cover.
This is the first one that I didn't. Well, I did do several. Never mind. I scrapped several ideas, and there's still like another version of that I haven't released. There's like one with like fairy of wood sprite on there and stuff, and I may eventually release that. I don't know, but there's so much detail I do put into them, and I just get picky. I mean I'm picky on my covers. I just sit there and nag at them forever in my brain until it makes sense. I worked on that since July of last year, so I mean it was a long time before I even showed anyone that cover. But I I don't know. Maybe I'll hire a cover artist eventually or something, or a character artist, and just, you know, take the piece of time that I need on other things and kind of focus. That's probably the smart thing to do as an author.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard because it's like when you have the skill set and you can, even if it does take you time, I can see the temptation there to be like, I can make it look the way I want. And then,
Yeah,
like, if it
yeah,
doesn't, I'm responsible for the fact that it doesn't.
yes, it is, and I've actually gone back and re-updated art from my first book that I was like, oh, I don't like it anymore, and I had to redraw parts of it. And so, like, the newer versions of the book are going to be slightly more polished now, like in the art of my first book, even. So yeah, you're right. There's so much that you can do where if you have the skill set, you do want to do it. And I don't think that's necessarily the right thing to do though. I don't recommend
Yeah.
it. I really
Uh,
don't.
It does, I can imagine, add so much of stuff.
Yeah, it does. And on the carry, I did not draw character art in the book because I was like, I'm not doing that this time. But now, like going back, a lot of people are like, this is kind of like a graphic novel without the graphics. So, it's like I could see someone eventually doing that.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's hard to walk away from it because I love doing art, but I'm just not fast at it. I never have been.
I don't know if we've for as long as some of my covers are taking, I don't think you're alone in the not so fast.
Your covers are beautiful though.
They turn out wonderful.
There's like the Dragons of Old. That's an epic cover. Like I look at that cover, I'm like, I want that on my shelf.
Yeah,
So
I want to get that like done in like gold foil. I like so on my backlist of things that I do want art for is I want to do a deluxe version where they have like the five dragons, like
yeah.
so you open
Oh,
it and that first thing is like the five dragons laying, and then I have
so
ideas, but that's just money because I don't have the skill set to really do it myself. So I have to find somebody to do it for me, and then it's all money. So I need to do one of these Kickstarters and get boat tons of money for people to finance my dragon drawings.
yeah. I actually had a lady who's in marketing, book marketing. She stopped by my desk on a Ren fair and said, "You need to start doing Kickstarters." And I was like, "Oh, really?" And she's like, "No, for real." And I was like, "Why?" And she said, "There's people in Kickstarters who just want to support indie authors." I was like, "What?" She's like, "Yeah,
Yeah,
you're missing out." And I'm like, "Maybe I should start that. I don't know." And it's one of
I don't
those
even.
like
It feels intimidating to me, but maybe you can
mm,
blaze that trail.
it does. It feels really
Tell,
intimidating. And if you don't come up with the right funds and everything, you already got your stuff printed out, and so you end up losing like all your money on it. It's scary. It really is. But I don't know. Maybe I'll try it. We'll see.
yeah,
Book one. This one's volume one. Maybe I'll do it on volume two.
and if you do, I highly request that you go through like these were the steps and put that out there so we can all try and steal it.
Yeah,
Feel
for
a little less
sure. Yeah.
overwhelming.
I've
Or we'll
been
just
I try to document what I do, but I'm probably not the best at it. I hate filming myself. And taking videos. Like half the stuff I do is not even out there. So it's so hard to like want to put yourself on camera and do that.
yeah, I have a vision in my head that's been bouncing around with for this like video that I want like my husband to get me while I'm writing and doing different stuff, and I'm like, I just haven't done it because it's just there's other stuff going on.
Editing, that's another thing too, is like as an author, no one told me how much I'd be doing video editing.
Yeah,
It's like pictures, videos all the time. Like just being a social media fiend.
making all these goofy little graphics, trying to make
Yes.
advertisements.
It's constant. Like no one said, "Oh, 90% of your job is now marketing." But that's really it. So,
What I need is a good fan who's like really into making marketing graphics and just wants to help me out.
that would be cool. I know a lot of people are really good at it too. I wish I was just like a natural. There's some people that it seems like they're more of a marketer than they are like a writer, and so it's impressive how much people can do out there, and they get a huge response from it, and their stuff's beautiful. So it, it's not impossible, but it's definitely not something that I've been personally thought. I just never thought that was where authorship would go, was being that kind of a route for whatever reason. Silly
You can be
me.
your very own book marketer because Lord knows that when you get those messages for book marketers, they're not.
Yeah, that's the other thing is like learning how to navigate the scams. It's kind of like every other day you get 20 of them. I'm
I got one the other
surprised.
day
Oh, go ahead.
that was pretty clever. It was like I had been on a podcast that was on YouTube, and it was like I heard you on, and then the podcast name, and I was like, that's pretty like interesting
That's
one, and it it was more legit looking. It didn't have like the I'm having a book club and it's like a page and a half of like Chat GPT text. It was a little more. I was like, ooh, that's like a little more tricky, and they like referenced something I was actually on.
yeah, they're getting clever. I got one
Yeah.
today that made me at least read it, and I will say I read it once and I was like, oh, it's a scam. I realized it, but it made me stop because it had the KDP and the name of the person in it, and it didn't go through my spam box. It actually hit my inbox. And I thought, is this really from KDP? And I started reading it, and the whole premise of the story was like, your book, Nick Carey's Last Stand, won't draw attention because it has the name of the book title in the description of the book or something really weird. Like it's like, wait, wow, this doesn't make any sense anymore. It's like, wait a minute, and I finally realized, oh, this is a scam. So they're getting more clever.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta adapt to keep sucking in the suckers.
I don't know who's man. I don't know who's clicking on their stuff and feeding them, but someone's doing it. They must be making
uh,
money.
they definitely somebody. Yep. Again, I've said it before, but I did get scammed when I very first started, and I was a baby author, and I had no idea what I was doing.
Oh
Um,
no.
I didn't know, I didn't understand like was doing a Google search, and they have those like the KDP helper websites that make it
Oh
look like they
no.
will help you get out. Yeah, I was like, oh yeah, so I just pay somebody and they'll help me get all this put together, and then I was like, oh shit! Like the second
Ah, that
I
sucks.
was like, nah, why am I an idiot? I'm such
Oh
an
man,
idiot.
that sucks. I'm so sorry to hear that.
It
That
happens, and I think like that's I'm part of the reason to have these kinds of conversations for people that are new authors is to learn some of this stuff. Like I've had
yeah
people that had covers like that they got scammed on and different stuff. So to try and help people
yeah
understand that one, if it happens to you, you're not alone and you're not like the biggest moron in the world. Like they prey on you when you don't have connections into the community. Like when you're brand new and you don't know and you feel overwhelmed and you're trying to get your stuff out there,
yes
that's who they're targeting. They're not targeting the people that have been on social media and have inroads into the writing community. So if I was to make
yeah
advice, to a new author, it's probably to get yourself connected to other authors because they're the ones that will help you, and then gut check through them. Hey, I got this
yes.
email, or like this guy reached out to me, or I was looking at this site before you push the buy button on anything.
That's yeah, no, that helps the community so much, especially like you said, as a new author. I remember I had five, six, maybe a dozen random messages, and they all came from these profiles with 1,000, 2,000 followers. And I thought, well, maybe they're legit. Like you don't know,
Yeah.
and then you realize it was almost a like copy and paste theme that they use over and over. So you kind of figure out pretty quick, like, wait, this can't be the same exact person saying the same exact thing. So yeah, it's sad how easy it is for a new author to fall into that trap.
Yeah.
So, and that is really good. That's one thing I will miss about the FOSHA being on X is you could kind of pull people over to that group so they could figure that out really quick. Is those new little nuanced things of being an author, a baby author, like you said, and not falling into the traps, and gut checking people with it. Yeah, that helps so much. So. Those are actually probably the more important parts about being a new author is just not falling in the pits,
Yeah. Yeah,
unfortunately.
it's a deep pit, man. There's
Yes,
it
it
goes
is.
down.
Yeah, yeah, you're not wrong. It's so deep. So yeah, that's really important. Thank you for doing that on this show and for the community. Thank you. So,
Yeah. All right, back to you. So I'm interested to know. So how long did this one take? You mentioned that you started Gwen's Kingdom in 2011. When did you
yeah.
start this one?
So I think the first draft of Gwen's Kingdom was written somewhere around 2014 or 15. Um, it's not the same. It's not the same book now that it was then. There was a lot more and less to it, and so I took. I think 2015. I was thinking about publishing book one back then, and I just said no. I don't want to do it. It's kind of just. I just didn't. Part of it was because I worked for the Air Force. I didn't have time to do anything. It was really just not possible for me to market a book at all, and I didn't want to query for ever. So I just kind of set it aside for a decade. And I think at the time, like a year later, I was like, I kind of just felt the need to keep writing. And so I just took the story somewhere in 2015, 16. I just started writing more and more, and I kept building onto the story. And a lot of this book came out of that writing session between probably 16 and 18.
Yeah.
And so I ended up with a lot of story that I'll probably never even use, sadly, but that's okay. I've built a world that I can always go back and kind of bounce my my ideas off of. So it's not the worst thing in the world. But I think a lot of it, at least the first maybe 50%, 60% of it came from there. And then I was just going to release, that's probably 40,000, 50,000 words. I was going to just release this half as that and then write or finish writing the second half and polish it up. But crazy thing happened. I started polishing this book and editing it. And like I said, it grew a couple thousand words every chapter. I was like, oh man, this is crazy. And then another chapter came to my mind. I was like, oh, I remember I was like, had this scene in back 10 years ago. I was going to put in the book and I never did. And I was like, maybe I should write this scene out. And I asked the betas and I was like, what would you do if I wrote this scene in there? And all of them were like, put it in, put it in. So there's a scene, there's a whole other chapter from that, and it's just like, gosh dang. So it kept growing and growing, but I'm really really happy with how it came out, even though there's like this blend of 10 years ago and current writing styles in there. I don't think most people will pick up on it because it's all been repolished 10 times now. So it's
Yeah.
it's kind of it's kind of a blend, I guess, if you to answer your question in a roundabout way. So
Yeah. So it's interesting to think like when you are an author that has done this over like a long period of time or has worked on the same project, that evolution of your writing style and how you might have changed, especially you read more, you get ideas, and yeah, I can see that might produce something depending on how polished stuff is at different
yeah,
points.
it's not it's not the typical way to do it, but I've learned so much too about just the way I write. And it's weird if I go back and read my writing from 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I guess even 2011, 12, I can see the growth in my prose and sometimes even where I've polished out things I like, and I'll go back and like I'll be like, "Oh, I kind of like the way I was writing here." And it's a little just more poetic and it has a little bit more flowery prose, and so it's real interesting to see the blend because I've taken such a huge time and just a huge leap in time to publish and go back and learn. But now I'm learning editing more and I'm learning more about, how to kind of make smooth, clear prose. So it's a weird process. It's something I don't know most authors probably don't do it this way at all, but it has taught me to look at things from a different perspective as far as polishing and editing and sometimes leaving some of that older style in there because that older style is so raw and fun and people do tend to like a little bit of that. And so yeah, it's real interesting to kind of fill it out and become the person and author I am today. I'm
So
I'm
I'm
happy to be here, but
yeah, I'm curious as far as like if we're thinking, you obviously have a manuscript that you can go back and practice this editing or writing changes and add a new chapter here and there. But are you working on other things? Like, do you do like your own little short stories? Like, what are you doing otherwise? Are you doing other writing beyond just working on a manuscript or polishing the same manuscript?
nothing outside of my universe. Because Gwen's Kingdom and Nikiri are both in the same universe. In fact, they'll eventually arc into the same story, in some way or another. Uh, to be honest, Nikiri came out of one of my later manuscript stories for Gwen's Kingdom, so they'll eventually have to cross bridges. But everything right now is pretty much in Gwen's Kingdom's universe, and I'll probably stay there the rest of this decade. I'm expecting. I've had a few requests where people say, "Could you do like a side book on maybe Friends and Delilah? I want to know their background. I want to know their story." And things like that. And it's like it's really interesting to get that kind of like feedback because people do want certain things or they want more in certain areas just to be kind of flesh out the story. And I've considered doing some of those side books and just make them standalone or something.
Hmm.
But they'd still be using the same magic system. They'd still be using the same universe. I do have some nonfiction works that I've written, in the last 5, 10 years that I've thought about publishing, but they'd be more about like, business modeling and things like that. It'd probably be a lot less, or coding, just be a lot less fiction and fun stuff for the audience that I have now. It wouldn't even make sense to them. So, if I did write anything else, it might just be like how to publish kind of stuff and how to market the way I do or something like that, a little
Yeah.
less fiction. But I really want to stay in my universe just because I feel like once I'm done with it and it's completed, I'll probably step out of writing for at least a year or two and kind of take a breather. But I don't know. I expect that to take many more books. So many, many
Yeah.
more.
I understand. I would imagine at this point, having spent so long with your world, that you're pretty familiar with it, and it's easy to come up with. To your point, it's like somebody wants to know, can you build a little bit more on this, or how did this happen, or where did this go, and what happens next? What happens next? I have that myself, so it's interesting to me because you've built a whole world. I imagine the idea of like, oh man, I have to start this all over and come up with all this stuff again for a different thing feels maybe overwhelming. It does to me,
Yeah,
anyways.
it it does. It actually almost feels like I'd be cheating right now, like on my work, because people do requests like they wanted book two of Gwen's Kingdom. I've literally had people send me messages, or they'll find me on social media and they're like, "Okay, where's the second one? I need it tomorrow." And so I feel like I'd be letting those people down, like that have already
Yeah,
kind of committed and they bought it and they're in the story and they anticipate those books. To me, it would feel like I'd be kind of almost pulling a George R. Martin or a Patrick Rothfuss on them, like
yeah,
they'd be a little bit hurt to see me, sidestep my current project like that. So, and I actually really do like being in the world of Gwen. I think it's a fun world to get lost in, and there's so much more to explore in it too. And even like this book here, the second one, like it begins with a view where it shows her mom and dad in a prologue in the past. And so like I get so much feedback from people that are like, you finally showed their mom and dad, and it's like they love it. And so, things like that where it's like, oh, I see how much this means to people. And I feel like I'd be doing something wrong by not putting the rest out there.
yeah.
I don't know, maybe that's weird to think that way, but yeah, I just feel like it would be the wrong way to treat my readers. So,
Get that loyalty going. I mean, I think, I guess I don't know, like, I don't, some of the other like big names, like obviously George R. R. Martin writes and he's created the world of Westeros, right? Like that is his world, and seems like he sticks mostly into that. So it seems fairly common for an author, once they've developed their own place, to hang out there for quite a quite a long time.
what are you gonna stay in yours, or you think you're gonna jump out? Like, what
So
would you do?
I mean, I just set myself up with a big old mess that has a little rife with possibilities. So I'm stuck there for a while longer.
Awesome. So well, that's good though.
Yeah,
You enjoy
I
the
wasn't
world.
honestly, yeah, I wasn't honestly sure either. Like as I was ending the like where when I started this series, it felt like it was probably going to be the end,
Okay. Yeah.
and I wasn't sure like what was going to happen next. But then as I was writing it, and I started to think of the world I was creating, because I created with this series a very different. It's like a very different culture.
Yeah.
So you
So
have like
cool.
medieval fantasy, right? But this is totally like they're like a grass people of hunter, like they're like the Dothraki, if you will, of dragon hunting. And
Okay.
you
Yeah.
have this very like different kind of society. And then I was like, well, what would happen if they stopped doing that and they started doing like, well, shoot, they would. I mean, you got warlords, so
That's so cool.
and that creates a really big, interesting political problem. And I was like, oh, fascinating. Now I'm going to have to think about that and what that would be. And so it allowed me to stay, which I appreciate, because I get very attached to my characters, and I feel like I'm having, for those of you who don't know, because you weren't part of the conversation earlier, I finished a series today, and I'm having the emotional feels of like finishing a story, which is like when you spend so much time, I'm sure you know, Brian, it's like you these like they're part of your brain like so often that you're thinking about them and you're thinking about what they would think about and you're thinking about like what they're going to do next and and then all of a
Yeah.
sudden you write that last scene and you're like, well, shoot, now what?
It's
Like I
so weird
guess,
because it's so real. It becomes so real in your head.
yeah,
And these characters are like, I feel like I know Gwen and Shelley and Jack. I feel like I really do. It's so weird, like just to think that one day they're gone and they're gonna have their own, like they'll live their legacy in a book. It does.
yeah.
It comes out of your soul. And so as weird as it sounds, I totally get it. As an author, I get that. That's a wild thing to think about, but it's real. So
Yeah.
yeah,
One day they're just not going to be there anymore, and then I mean they'll be in your books and you can revisit them in a way, but like you're not. It's like saying goodbye to a friend in a more significant way.
that's so true. And there's an emotional side of it that people never see, like when they read the books, because of that, because it is so much like you'll never really fully portray that experience to others. They can get in it, they can experience it themselves, like from the books. But I know for me, like when I write characters, I have character sheets. I'm talking like I'll look at backgrounds and these things, like what would they do in these situations. I actually like kind of quiz myself on it, and so yeah, there's a lot of developmental growth in these characters for me. But yeah. And I don't know how much I always wonder like how much does that play out in the pages? Like it does to a point, it has to, but you always wonder like does it relate the same way? Like do people really understand the character? And and it is real, like I don't know, years into it, there is something about it. You've been in these characters' skins and minds and brains and they're friends. You hate
Yeah.
to see them go. It's so sad, but it's true. You're like, all right,
That's the curse of the author, folks. You can join this yourself by getting out your laptop and typing away.
that's so true though. Like, that is not something anyone ever tells you. Like, no authors like out there talking about this. That's
I
really
don't think, yeah, that it's actually very interesting to me that's I don't think I've really heard it. Like I've heard writing advice and like world building advice and stuff, but it's like the real emotionality of some of this.
I bet you there are some authors that went into some depressive like stages in their life after writing their stories like this because it's such a huge it's an undertaking that you spend years and years developing and you finally have this massive thing and books are so heavy on the upfront. You almost have to have the story ready before you even write it, like it's so much. And
Yeah,
then you take all this time writing it and then publishing or editing and polishing
editing
it,
and
yeah, and then the character art and you get it all ready and then it's out there and it's like boom, it's over and it's just like suddenly all this work comes to a stop. I'm sure there's like these moments of depression for these bigger authors that go through this. It has to be, because you're right.
yeah.
There's an emotional like drop off. It just dies. So that's real. It's very
Yeah,
real.
I wonder if it's easier. Like, I would wonder if, say, you're something like this, Sarah J. Maas or like a George R. R. Martin, where you actually can go and people will talk to you about your character in a way where you can relive that. Whereas when you're an indie author and your following is much smaller, you don't really necessarily get that very often. Where if somebody is asking you about, like, tell me about Gwen, or like, I want to know this backstory, and it gets you thinking about it again, even
That's
after it's been
true.
written.
I bet you. Yeah, that is true. I have had a few people have reached out to me, but a lot of my audience is so young that I don't get to hear a lot from them unless I just run into them. And so that does happen, which is happening more and more, which is really cool.
Yeah,
And then people will come up and they'll be like, "Oh yeah, tell me about this," and they'll ask me a question. But I bet you're right. I bet you the bigger you get, the less depressive kind of sense you get from it because people are reliving it so frequently and they're reading it and they're coming back to you with that feedback and you're seeing it in reviews and you're seeing it being discussed online. I think that would probably make it kind of full circle, like less depressive
yeah,
because you do get to see that, poor Tolkien and, Lewis because they didn't have social media. But
yeah.
I think at the same time, it's like I'm kind of picturing the back end of it. You're right. That does kind of bring it back to life. So I could see that being the kind of antidote for the drop off and the payoff, you know, being worth it in the end. So yeah, you're right.
I guess that's extra motivation for folks out there to do the work and put in the work to get your books out there into actual hands and engage with your audience in a real way, because
Yeah.
that
That's
will
such a
help you
good
out.
conversation. No one's really talking about this stuff, so I love this. And there is really like I can tell even just after putting like a book or two out, there really is that feeling of drop off where you're like, oh, it's done. You
Yep.
know, it's like, wait, what? It's done, and I got to work on the next book. So, but even if there wasn't a next book, it's just so out there in your face. Like, wait. So yeah, having that feedback and working for it is worth it. It really is. Not just it's probably mentally healthy to get
Yeah.
that feedback. It's so true.
Push you into the marketing crap. Like, yeah, I know nobody, none of us. Well, I mean, I'm sure there's somebody out there who loves it, but I don't. It's not,
I haven't, yeah, I haven't really. I can't say I love it, but what I do love about getting out is meeting people who love to read. And when you bump into the right person
yeah,
who you can tell is like really into the same things you are, and they want to get into your book, and they've had this experience with you as an author, and now they're like more excited to get in the book and read it. Man, that really does. It makes a difference when you're out there doing that, and that does happen. And it only happens if you're out there putting yourself out there and meeting people and marketing and that part of it. It's I mean, it's indescribably amazing. It really is. So for anyone who isn't out there marketing, you know, print off some flyers, go take your book and walk around and meet people in libraries. Do what you got to do. You know, it's
I
worth
was
it.
on a I was on a podcast the other day, and we were talking about live events, and one of the guys, I'm not going to endorse this, but suggested that what he has done is he has printed out QR codes, and on his way to work, he will put them on the train, and people will scan them, and it takes them to his Amazon page.
Uh, yeah,
And he's
I've
gotten
never done that.
sales from graffiti on the train. So, I'm not endorsing
What?
things like this, but if you just print QR codes and stick them on light posts, you might get some sales.
That's interesting. So I actually, I try to do it with permission, but I will take my bookmarks and I will
Put
go
them
around
places.
to, well, I'll ask the owners. I'll go to gas stations or pizza shops or cafes or wherever I can think of that, you know, someone might see them because readers are everywhere.
Yeah.
And if you go somewhere like a cafe, a lot of people go to cafes to just relax and read or do work. And so they see a bookmark. They're a lot of times they're like, "Oh, I read," and they just start it. You know, I'll put a note on there that says like "free on KU" or something. And so people see them and they have a QR code. But I always try to do it legally with permission, and sometimes I get rejected. So
Yeah.
you, you got to be willing to take a few rejections. So
Yeah. That's thick skin.
you have to.
Yeah.
And
You might go into
surprisingly
the
enough,
bookstore, and they might tell you no, but they might say yes. So,
yeah, a lot of them want to help. Surprisingly enough, so that's the second part is you do meet some people who are just like, hey, I respect that you're out there hustling and doing this, and they'll go out of their way to tell someone that they know how. And for me, a lot of times it's, oh, what age range is your book for? And I'll say, well, teenagers generally. And so they'll go, oh, I know someone that has a teenager. I'll pass it on to them. And so you never know where that bookmark ends up. And I've gotten random reads and things from people who do that, and so it's worth it, even though it is a lot of work. And yeah, you do get rejected sometimes. And sometimes you get rejected in a really mean way, but that's just people.
yeah.
So,
All right, Brian. I'm going to give you a chance. Do you have anything you want to read to us?
oh man, oh, okay, this part I forgot about this part. Oh, we can maybe read. Here we go. We'll read from the prologue. How about that?
Beautiful.
Yeah. Wish I'd picked something good out so I knew exactly which one it would be. My queen. This is Cassius, her father, speaking to Selena. My queen, you still worry. Her eyes flicked toward the red carpet below, before returning to his. A slight nod confirmed his suspicion. The council never approved our marriage. We still hide it like criminals. What will they say of a child? They'll have to get over both, Cassius said. What confidence do we have that they can? The more we affirm the bonds between the West and Northern kingdoms, the more they punish us by diverting resources to the East. Cassius nodded, but kept his slight smile as he spoke. The council knew nothing when the Age of Man ended and the Age of Magic began. There would be wizards ruling the kingdoms. Yes, but only one of three has been of their choosing, Cassius. They seek to control ours as well. They try to thwart us at every turn. They levy our people with little cause, often to fix problems Zes brings upon his own kingdoms. Yes, love, indeed. But you know our people aren't having it. Every public vote has favored our leadership. Every attempt to hurt us has ultimately failed. We are winning. I hope that was a good line. I don't know. I just picked something random.
I love it. All right.
Thank you so much, Jessica. I love being here and talking to you. You have a great podcast.
I appreciate it. I appreciate everybody who comes on and talks with me. I appreciate that I get to be able to do this. This is it's a blessing to me to be able to celebrate with people their accomplishments. You know, anybody that is able to get a novel down, I'm even going to say, like, even if it's, not the best thing in the whole world, the fact that you were able to get this thing out of your head
Yeah.
and you had the discipline to get that written. I think that deserves recognition.
Oh yeah, definitely.
it,
And
it
the
takes a
Electric
lot.
Moon is on sale right now as well. I should say that. The
Yeah.
ebook's only 99 cents. I forgot. I should probably
Yeah,
plug
but
that.
by all means, the last thing here is to let you, Brian, go ahead and plug yourself, your books, where people find you and them. And then I gotta hold a baby so my husband can go back to a tree in our driveway.
Oh my God. Well, have fun with the tree, and thank you so much. You're such an awesome person for doing this, and it's always an honor to be on your show. So thank you. Yeah, you can find my books on Amazon, Ingram Spark, Barnes and Noble, Walmart.com, all those places. Uh, I think this one right now, the new one is only on Amazon until the next few days. I'm waiting for my approvals through Ingram Spark. They still haven't sent me them for whatever reason. They've been dragging their feet, so I can't speak for them. But I can say they're definitely on Amazon. The Electric Moon, that's book one. It is 99 cents on ebook for a few more hours, and then it's gonna shut off that sale. So grab it now while it's on sale. And uh, man, thank you so much. This is such a pleasure. Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, I'm gonna end this stream. Bye.